I've been thinking about why some villains stay with us and others disappear. Not just from the screen, but from memory. We watch the movie, we feel the tension, the music swells, the creature appears, and for that moment it seems terrifying. But like a week later, it's gone and forgotten. And the more I started looking at modern horror design, the more I began to notice a pattern. Modern horror villains are often over-designed. Layers of prosthetic, extreme distortion, elaborate costumes, visual spectacle, and CG, everything trying really hard to look frightening. But looking frightening and feeling frightening are two very different things. So tonight, I want to take a closer look at that idea. This is the first episode of Horror Autopsy, and tonight, we're dissecting modern horror villains. And while we talk about it, I'm going to experiment visually as well, because horror design isn't just theory, it's structure. So let's start off with some of the examples of the things I'm kind of talking about when it comes to the over-design of modern horror villains. Let's take a real quick check at this. Chat it out, shall we? Alright, so come on. We all love Freddy Krueger, right? I love Freddy Krueger, you love Freddy Krueger. But this is the thing that I found really, really hard to deal with because I really wanted to love this Freddy. It was cool. It was more realistic and grounded. Like the makeup was very much about real burns. You know, what I really kind of liked was how the actor pierced his mouth and sort of kept all the skin tight around his mouth. It was disquieting. But the problem was it didn't really resonate. Like it was really realistic, but it kind of lost it all in the over trying to be too realistic, if that makes sense. Original Freddy Krueger kind of stuck with you because he was a great character, and there's a lot of things they did so well in those films. Wes Craven's fantastic, but this visual was just so iconic in its original form, and you kind of got this, which was just trying too hard, at least in my opinion. Let's go on with another one. Okay, maybe not this particular shot, but I think the message is there. I loved Sinister, but I thought Bagul could have been so much cooler. This silhouette kind of thing that you get with him at the early stages of the film, I think is really good, and it was always cool because he was in the background and he was a silhouette. But as he got revealed later on, it just felt like it was trying way too hard to be scary and, uncomfortable. Silhouette, amazing. Close up, just kind of wah. But again, I think it's because it's trying so hard to be super amazing. Here's a good one that isn't about over design so much as it's an overthink, and it just kind of telegraphs it so much. Jared Leto gets a lot of well-deserved criticism for his unnecessary tomfoolery on sets, but I also think that in this case it just tries way too hard to be way too creepy, and that to me is where the kind of over design comes from. I don't necessarily think it was his decision to sort of make himself withdrawn and gaunt and sort of homelessy feeling, or unhomed, excuse me, I didn't mean to be rude. But again, it just feels like it's trying too hard to be a creepy guy. And I think we have tons of examples of horrific human beings that don't have a sort of post-it note on their face saying, "Hi, I'm a creepy dude." And I think that's an over-design. I think that's another example of just this sort of over-exaggeration of a feature, so it kind of pushes or gets over. I put Sadako Samira from The Ring in here because I think, again, there's a foundational character that this was based on, and that one didn't suffer from having to go this far. Do I have a problem with like the sort of swamp-ridden desiccation of the skin sort of feel to this character. Not in the least. It's totally on brand, and it makes total sense, and it's right on message. But it doesn't stick with you. It doesn't resonate. If you've seen Ringu and you've seen The Ring, you'll understand what I mean, where it's just, this is a very over push on the concept, where the restraint of its original is just so good, and it's so fantastic. So this is, I think, one of those good examples of maybe trying too hard is maybe the right answer. I have the one I really want to put. It's Pennywise, and I have both Pennywises. So I love Bill Skarsgård. I think he's phenomenal, and the things he does with his face in this role are phenomenal. However, just from the base structure of the character, I'm struggling with drawing Pennywise. I actually have been working on a Pennywise piece, and I'm having a problem with not making it too cartoonish, too clowny. I just think it's great for the poster. It's great in those moments, but it's not as deeply frightening as its predecessor. I mean, how can you not look at that and not see realistic, grounded fear? Like, I think it's terrifying, and it's exactly the contrast in what we're talking about here. Is this is restraint. I know it doesn't seem restrained. He's in a giant, rainbow outfit, and he's a clown, but the restraint is that this is something that you could see coming to your door, knocking on your door and saying, "Hi, I do kids parties." Maybe not that way, but you know what I'm saying. Whereas this feels frightening, but it's not realistic. It's not grounded. So that sort of takes it away, and then it makes it fantastic, which is great. It's supposed to be. But for me, that doesn't resonate as a good villain, and certainly not something that's frightening or scary. So if we're talking about horror, that's kind of what we want to do, right? We want to get frightened in some way. I had a couple more examples. This one, I mean, I guess it's not fair, but maybe it's just me kind of being a little tired of it. The sort of translucent white skin, malnourished, mole-like feature sort of feel to it. I put Barbarian in there because it was a very well-received film. I've watched it, and I wasn't a big fan, and this kind of was one of the reasons why, was I just went, oh, it's creepy mole person. Surprise. So, but I think the creepy mole person could have been well done and delivered in a different way, instead of kind of just doing what everybody does with creepy mole people, if you know what I'm saying. Any creepy mole people out there that feel like they're being misrepresented, I apologize, but this is not very creative. And I think that's part of it too, right? We could do really cool stuff, and we're just sort of the prime example for me, and kind of the subject for tonight, is Nicolas Cage, specifically Longlegs. And you're probably thinking, well, he's not Pennywise, but I mean, but he kind of becomes Pennywise-ish, right? I have a problem with Longlegs as a character and a design because of who you have as the character and as the actor. So in one sense, Nicolas Cage has got an incredible range for insanity. So I don't think you need all of the extra stuff. But since the extra stuff's there, I also think that, again, kind of like the Jared Leto in The Little Things, it's just unnecessarily ridiculous. And it becomes and overtakes the character and the characterization. And that's, I think, a prime example of over-design. So for me, I thought tonight would be kind of fun if we talked about this idea of like how things are kind of not as frightening because they're over-designed, we would play with Nicolas Cage. So, in the spirit of keeping everything with continuity and using this style, I thought what we would do is we would kind of do this sort of experiment. So we'll take an actual photograph and we'll mess around with it and we'll play with it. But we're gonna design a Nicolas Cage character that is conforming to these new rules, and we're gonna try to make it scary. So I have two Nicolas Cage pictures that I thought we could play with. One, I mean, I just want, because it's funny and it's awesome, and the other one I think we're going to use. This is just an awesome Nicolas Cage face, just so everybody can see Nicolas Cage face. And I'll tell you right now, honestly, if you I searched menacing Nicolas Cage, and I just pressed the images on Google, and I got a smorgasbord of ridiculous Nicolas Cage faces, but this one's from, I think, Face Off? I want to say it's from Face Off. If anybody in here knows, please let me know. I forgot to look at the chat. Thank you very much. I have to get caught up. I'm so sorry. Hello, everybody. I did not know that people were here, and I feel foolish now. I'll get back to Nicolas Cage face. So if you want to go online and look up Nicolas Cage faces, this is one of them you'll find. This is the one I thought we would use. It's a little bit more like dad headshotty, but I think it'll work for what we're doing. So since we've kind of got a grasp on what we're talking about here, which is this sort of over design of scary characters, I think what we can probably do is do a little bit of sketching. So I'm going to start sketching and we're going to sort of talk it out and figure things out. For anybody who I've missed, stream, so I'm just getting used to stuff, so bear with me. Okay, so let's make some rules. One, we have to make this character conform to what I'm saying doesn't make characters as resonant as they used to be. So can we agree that over-exaggerated features is something that we're talking about here? We saw the Pennywise with the sort of bulbous head. Even with the long legs makeup, you see this sort of almost cakey sort of chunkiness to Nicolas Cage's face beyond, being old and shit. Excuse my language. I too am old. So let's go exaggerated features. You're gonna see really quickly that if I can't spell a word, I just kind of scribble it. That's a chef thing. So we've got exaggerated features. What else do we want to do? For whatever reason, I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like right now it's really fashionable to have people in almost like cakey makeup. Again, long legs, even the Pennywise, that chipping away organically sort of clayish cakiness, which I really liked, by the way. I thought it was awesome. But again, it seems like it's being overused. So let's say at least this. Let's say textured skin. Yeah? We can't exactly depict a personality, but it seems like everybody we talked about in this is either an over-exaggerated creepy dude or a over-exaggerated super monster. So everything seems like it kind of conforms to this need to be over-exaggerated. So nothing's subdued. There's nothing subtle about what we're about to do. So let's just make sure that we know that it's just going to be, I don't want to say ridiculous, but like that razor's edge kind of idea. I think if you look at long legs and you look at Pennywise, it's kind of already edging past grounded, and it's already in ridiculous. So for me, it's ridiculous. Maybe you guys think it's not so ridiculous. I'm not sure. But that's, I think, what we got to find out. So I'm going to say edgy ridiculous. Let's go edgy ridiculous, okay? All right. And then, I mean, let's give this character some sort of backbone, like this sort of grounding in some sensibility. So let's just make him a stalker. We're not going to do like stalker killer guy. We're just going to be creepy stalker guy. You know, a la long legs. All right? Makes sense? Sound good? Excellent. Thank you for the raid. That is really, really awesome of you, and I appreciate you all for stopping by. Anybody who's still here, thank you for hanging out. Okay, so let's play with Procreate. I use Procreate, by the way. A lot of the times I've sketched out, and I take photographs of my own work, and then I'll use Procreate to play with them. So that's kind of my process. It's also kind of fun because I can do this and we can see it together. So let's do that. Let's see it together and let's have some fun. Okay. So while I do this, I love the idea of kind of thinking through what I like about some of these choices, because I gotta be honest with you, as an artist, I like super crazy. Like, I like crazy, nutty, over-exaggerated features. If anybody can see on the screen, you can see all of the things I use. I'm just using presets in Procreate itself. I haven't really gotten to the stage where I manipulate things and sort of make things and tips and such. I essentially just sort of played with it. I really never learned it past that. So back to like, I love the exaggerated features and all the craziness. I just don't think they're scary. As an artist, I like them though. So let's think about Nicolas Cage here, and let's start thinking about what we want to do. I immediately kind of want to just play on the same thing that everybody else seems to like to do, which is kind of play with his the chubbiness of his face and try to see if we can do something there. But I also think that the eyes on like creepy characters are always really important. So we have like a base. I don't have to do the whole mapping the face thing. We're just going to start playing around with his eyes and see what we can make here of this. I have never like been a huge fan of like horror movies and horror characters that are kind of built to jump scare you, but that's it. Like, don't get me wrong, I like them. Like, they're great characters, but like the whole like I'm a jump scare character is just kind of you see it coming and it doesn't stick with you. Like, think about that's a bad pupil. Think about, you know, the first time you see Michael Myers in Halloween and that sort of that bush, that playing with your peripheral vision sort of feel to it, right? It sticks with you. I mean, I imagine anybody who saw that when it first came out probably thought twice when they walked past a hedge. Do you know what I mean? And it wasn't like an overstretch or an overpush. We're gonna go crazy face with Nick Cage here. So what we're gonna do here is I think we're gonna kind of go like, I'm thinking something like, I don't want to do skeleton face because I think that's a bit much, but let's kind of like, let's round him out a bit, right? And let's kind of pull him. We'll pull him a bit. Maybe we can pull him and make him really sort of like squinty fat guy, but like really creepy. Like he's watching you sleeping in a cardigan. Cardigans are frightening, man. Okay, they're not frightening by, you know, design, but I don't know. If I saw Nicolas Cage sitting outside my window watching me in a cardigan, it would be disconcerting to say the least. And not like long legs creepy, just standing there in his PJs, hanging out. That'd be weird. Okay, that nostril is not in line with his face, just so you guys know. Okay, so as an artist goes, I have to say one of the greatest freedoms about digital platforms like Procreate is the fact that I can make a lot of mistakes and I don't feel like I'm getting punished when I do it. It just means that I think for me, I'm happy to experiment a bit more and be a little more less restrained is maybe the right answer. See, like that doesn't make any sense. Look at this nose. What are we doing here, guys? All right, let's just change that out a bit. But what do you think? I think when it comes to horror, I think understating things and playing on people's natural fears is a much more effective tool than kind of beating you up with this sort of, yeah, this is the scary guy. Like, look at him, he's scary. What do you guys think? Do you think that's the case? Do you think understated character development is a better move than big makeup CG scary? I think that's the backbone to the thesis for me, is that you've got this predisposition with a lot of producers of horror to just do the work for the audience, if that makes sense. I almost want his face to be kind of melty too. I think we might do melty face. Right? So I think there's that like need for people to over tinker an idea to the point where it gets so overdone that you're just stuck with that overproduction. And I think that is maybe some of the things we suffer from, right? Like maybe that's what it is. Everybody's trying to one up each other. You know? When I go through this process, there's a lot to like fighting the natural form of the actual photograph. In the thumbnail piece that I did, I didn't fight it so much, but I was also just trying to play with it and just make something kind of cool that would speak to what I was doing. Right? Like right now it looks like I'm trying to do that half face thing that I did with the thumbnail, and I don't think that's what I want to do. That's the fun part about art though. I mean, I think you get to mess about a lot more, and that kind of creates that, I mean, I'd like to say masterpiece is probably the wrong word, because I mean, when's my blarby Nicolas Cage face gonna make that happen? Just on a design note, right? I'm trying to make this look like it's gonna turn menacing. So for me, as an artist, I want to start popping features. Features I really like to sort of just use, and I think a lot of people do. Eyes are a big one. Eyes are always really easy to kind of use as focal points. I'm a big mouth teeth dude. Like, I like to over exaggerate mouths. I really like exposed teeth. For some strange reason, I guess I find that really sort of menacing and kind of creepy. The whole like, you know, creepy smile face. I get a kick out of it. I don't know what we're gonna do with blobby Nicolas Cage though. So part of me kind of wants to say like maybe we can do a little body horror feel to it and just stitch him. Like stitch him up and see what we can do with stitching. We can use stitching as our sort of theme to make him really creepy. So yeah, let's do stitching. Stitching. All right. We don't have to have a story for this guy anyway, just so everybody knows. We could just make him creepy guy, and then somebody could go and pitch him somewhere else. Yeah, so I like one of my favorite understated, but like super resonant horror character is John Doe from Seven, right? I mean, not only is he a horrific character, like he does horrific things, but it's also the fact that he's so, I guess, dialed into his ethos or his psychosis or his whatever, that there's nothing but that. And no one stop that. From an artist perspective, just so you know, I don't necessarily think I use layers correctly, but I kind of use them to protect spaces. So you probably just saw me add a layer. So I'm adding a layer because I want to play with the stitching idea, right? So I'm trying to figure out if I want the stitching to like go through the lip or if I want it to go over the lip. And I don't like pinch it. You know what I'm saying? So like one way is kind of, I think, burying the actual stitch, but still kind of in that almost comic booky sort of way, having it floating above. We could do that, right? And then tighten it up down here. And then we can add like the pursing of the lip and the tightening just under here. Sort of make that more pervasive by just giving it that pull, right? And then basically like the stitch hole is buried in that particular spot. You just have to figure out, like, I don't really want to get into the middle. So to me, it's like it makes sense to kind of go this way, right? And then conversely just hit that side. And we'll put a little sneaky stitch right in there. Sorry. Any artist who's ever thought of doing art live had to have thought that they could get a sneaky little stitch in there. A little pretty little stitch in there. And then I think maybe what we'll have to do is we'll carry over our stitch theme and we'll do something with this eye that we've already started here. Maybe what we'll do is, like, we'll have the stitching kind of pulling over, but then like tightening. So we'll have to like figure out where on the eye we're going to stick the stitch so it starts to like almost pull tighter, as if like the eyelid is pushing it upward. So I think we're going to have to kind of like maybe loop in a bit more, if that makes sense. So like if our eyeball is right here and the eyelid kind of comes off like this, and then we've got the lip of the eyelid, that kind of like that little piece of flesh where you get your eyelashes out, which I don't do. I don't know why. I'm sorry if anybody loves eyelashes. I just don't seem to add them. And then kind of have that same crease right here, and then have that eye kind of pop like that. So the question goes like, where do we stitch? And I kind of feel like you want to stitch like this a little bit more, so there's like tension, and almost like have a drooping effect with some of like the catches around it, as if the eyelid is like fighting the looping. Do you know what I mean? So it's like it's warbly and it's just like kind of connected, kind of not connected. So I kind of think that might be the right answer, like that kind of feel, right? And then we can do our sneaky stitch, but instead of having it like the lips where we're like kind of looping it tight, so there's like a little bit of breathing space, so we can kind of like have this little space here that kind of breaks, where you'd assume like there's like holes and there's airflow, right? But the rest is sort of tightened up, and what we'll do is we'll play with a little bit of shading in there and some more detail work just around the stitching, just to give it that kind of like, again, that pursed skin feel. Because I think that's the gimmick we're playing with him. And then what we'll do with this other eye here is, instead of having it open, we'll close it up. You know what I mean? So we'll stitch this one entirely closed, just so that, you know, why not, right? I mean, we're already doing the stitch theme. I guess we can we can go farther. You want to start stitching every orifice together, we can do that, and that's creepy and it's horrific, right? And it's over the top, which is what we're kind of going with, right? Is over designing a character. So let's continue with that magical theme. Let's play with, you know, Nick Cage, what Nick Cage got working for him, right? So we'll kind of put this as the under lid there. You'd think this one would be easier, but I kind of look at the stitch together look to be a little bit more difficult, only because with the eyeball, you can distract it with a whole bunch of detail around it, but now you're just kind of stuck with, like, eye. Just eyelid. What's up? Right. And then you kind of have to look at it from that perspective, too. We gotta... One of the things I do think is something that I feel like things to remember if you're going from conventional art to a digital format. With a conventional art, you know, drawing pad sort of feel, you can step back and look at it and you'll be like, oh, that's what I'm doing. I find sometimes I get way too caught up in this, getting way too tight in what I'm doing, that I lose sight of, oh, right, that's part of a bigger piece. Like, I would even look at this eyeball right now and say, like, it's just slightly out of where I want it to be. Now, advantage to being a layer hoarder, I guess, if you want to call that, is I have all these layers separated, so I can kind of tweak stuff so that it just makes more sense. And I think that was really what the problem was our eyeball just wasn't lining up, right? Yeah, I think that makes more sense. It looks a little better, right? So yeah, so let's do that. Oh, hello. All right, that makes more sense. Things you tweak while you're doing your thing, right? I looked at this afternoon multiple times setting up the stream, and then I forgot to put the comments on the screen. Gotta love it. All right, so we're going with stitching, and we've got Nicolas Cage here, and I think we're gonna make him like a little more bulbous, and I think that's gonna kind of be the way we're gonna go. I wanted to make all of the pieces for this particular series the same sort of color palette as I did for my thumbnails. So once we get through this sort of sketching part, we'll start adding some color and then we'll pull from that palette. Okay, so in the spirit of continuing to add more layers, we're going to do that. And in this case, I think we can do a little bit of curvature. And I don't think we have to be overly detailed. I think we're just going to kind of play that game and allow the way we curve the lines to give it that sort of natural movement. Maybe we'll separate the eyelid over here so it's a little more pert or tight, but a little bit of space right there. Right, and then same answer, we're gonna kind of pull a little bit of that detail here. A lot of it's gonna get into this sort of lower lid area where you know you've got that pulling. So you kind of want to, I think, sort of give it that motion. Again, these are like micro details that, like, there's the piece that we're looking at. We're gonna probably cut it up and change out just what we're really focusing on, but this is the Cage. All right, so let's give him this a little bit of exaggeration here. I don't know. I'm kind of digging the idea of, oh, did I do what I think I did? It is what I did. So, okay, just again, hero tip. Remember to switch out your layers. Especially if you've started one. I think I've got this bad boy for that. So, eventually I organize my piece. Don't judge. All right, so we'll go back to this. And I think we're going to go with the stitching everything, just because I think it sounds ridiculous, so I think we're going to do that. So we'll do nostrils in a little bit. All right, let's go with a little bit more of that kind of exaggerated form. I don't think we exaggerated his face on this side as much as we should. Let's go a little bit more of that lower area. I'm still going to use his chin line. I'm just going to... I made a spot somewhere. Look, I made a spot. I gotta get rid of it later. Alright. Let's go with this. Alright. We won't square them off. We'll just use that natural silhouette we've got from the photograph. Okay, so stitched up mouth, stitched up eye. We've got the creepy eye coming through. That's going to be kind of fun. Yeah, we'll keep using this layer because it's fine. It'll be the face details. Now, I've already made this, photograph transparency, pretty heavy so that it's not dominating, and I can obviously see my line work over this piece. You can do this whatever way you guys want. You can straight draw this from watching an example on a screen, which, if that works for you, that works. I haven't done a lot of this. I did the first one was the one I did for this thumbnail, and I thought it was kind of cool, so I thought I'd try it again. And like I said, just because Nick Cage... I think the thing about the whole long legs problem for me is that you have a guy like Nicolas Cage who has never demonstrated a lack of, like I said, range when it comes to crazy, right? And you've got this character that's, obviously very just strange, right? At least in terms of the visual. And you got this guy, and he's just great at crazy and strange. Why go as far as you did with the whole aesthetic, right? Why? And I think that's the thing I find kind of baffling. It's no different than the amount of CG that they use in it when it comes to Pennywise later, like the second part, where it was just all very CG. I'm gonna drink some coffee as we go through this, because I love coffee. You will learn this. You will learn that I love coffee as we go, because I will always be drinking it as we go. Okay, Mr. Face. I see. Okay, so I've got a thing about, like, I don't think our nose is as, I was going to say potent, but I don't know if our nose is as effective as it should be. I like the stitching idea, and I think we're going to stitch his nose. But I kind of feel like the nose itself is like a lost opportunity. So I think what we'll do is first we'll add the stitching in and just mess with it just to sort of see. But I guess the question is, like, is it the size? Because I think if we go bigger, right, we're gonna get into like the cheek is gonna start pushing in onto the nostril, right? So it's gonna kind of push out the nose. But I don't know if that's the thing, right? Do we want this like kind of bulbousy, nosy thing? I don't know, let's try it out. Let's see what looks good. Hold on, we gotta figure out which part's the nose. Oh no, I have like two parts that are nose. Okay. Well, let's turn that off for a second. And we'll look at my nose idea. Okay, so we've got like this space here. This space here, and that's kind of where we're going to start dropping cheeks, right? So, and we've got centers kind of established there. So now it's a question of like, do we go with this kind of like bigger, rounder sort of nose? Okay, I don't think that works. I don't know about you guys, but I don't think that works. Do we go kind of like big nostril into this, kind of like more of that wider approach, giving us more room to play with like the pierce, like the stitching idea, and then kind of just bring it down like this, kind of round it out like this. I mean, if we're honest, it kind of works better with the face. In terms of the way the face looks and the structure of the face, I kind of think that might be the right answer. So here's what we do. Now what we have to do is this. Okay, so first we're gonna do this. Okay, that's the one. So I got to get rid of a couple lines here. This one was in the way, right? So let's just look at that much better. And I don't know if we're going to have to do too much with the bridge, but we'll mess with it a little bit. Let's go back to this. Yeah, that's drastically
so let's do this. And I'm thinking we're going to just erase. And we take this all out. Over here. This happens from time to time, or for some reason I cannot erase things. Oh, because I wasn't erasing the right thing. Alright, there we go. I think we gotta get rid of that. Right. I don't think there's any reason to get rid of this section here. I mean, other than what I just did, which was silly. But I don't think there's any reason to get rid of this, because I think it still lines up with the rest of the face. I think just the more bulbous nose works for the look we're looking at. I think we'll just trim this out a bit, right? Just kind of cut that like that. And then I guess we can go back into this and then quickly just get rid of this guideline here. Sorry, my eraser was too big. Get rid of this guideline here. And we'll get rid of this guideline here. Perfect. Okay. Let's get rid of you. We can't. What is this? I'm a little finicky when it comes to certain things. Like if this line doesn't make sense to me, it's probably something that no one else will be able to see, but for me, I'll see it and it'll bug me. There we go. Okay, that works. Yeah, I think that works. All right, let's go. You know what we have to do is we have to do that. Okay. All right, so at base we've got that, and that. Question is, the top end here, are we going to have a guy with a lot of hair? Are we going to do the crazy wild hair thing? Or are we going to do the sort of subdued bald look? Right now we've got Nicolas Cage with Nicolas Cage hair. I don't know if that's what we're looking for, so let's at least just map out what we're talking about in terms of his hairline. Even with the face that we've got. Let's just fix this part here. Because I do agree, this kind of works for what we're doing anyway. Right? We can use that as our the basis of our face. I don't think there's any reason to mess with his ears other than just either giving them detail or no detail. So we'll just kind of map them out for now, and then we can mess with them again later if we want to. Right? That's the structure, right? And, we want to skull it out. We can, kind of give him the back of his head here. Right? Right. Alright, so that's kind of what we're working with. Now it's just a matter of looking at it and saying, okay, well, how are we going to play with it? So, let's endeavor to cover off our boy's face here. Let's just do a basic, color to start. So, I'm not one of those people who have sort of got a collection of colors that I use. I'm very piece dependent, so I'll just pick a color and we'll go with it, and then I'll mess around with it later. Since we're going to eventually go with the green palette, we're just going to use this kind of minty green, so that's what we're going to use as the sort of baseline for what we're doing. And all I'm now going to do is I'm going to start layering the backgrounds, so that we can get rid of the photograph of Nicolas Cage, and we can start to stage out the stuff that we want to. And it's really just a lot of just freehand color stamping. So while I do this, we'll keep chatting about what we've been chatting about. So I gave 7 Up as one of the, films that I think is a really good example of restrained horror, right? Especially with their villain. So what do you guys think? You think that's a good example of this kind of phenomenon, or do you think there's better examples of that out there in film history? I imagine there are. But my question, I guess, for people would be, is that modern sensibility, that over-exaggeration, is that what does resonate with the audience now? Am I the enigma? You know what I mean? Am I the person that's not getting it? And everybody else is getting it loud and clear. It's just something that I'm not seeing, which is fair. I mean, that's kind of the enjoyable part about art, film, and the like, is we all get to experience this and see what we want to see or see what we can see, right? Not necessarily all seeing the same thing, because that'd be really boring. Okay, so there's a so there you go. That's I think some of the fun part about doing this is seeing where you've kind of gone with your line work. I don't think it means it's obscured in any way by when you do it. It's just, it's kind of like, oh, all right, well, that's how that looked. All right, that's cool. Our exaggerations aren't crazy, right? Right now we've kind of given Nicolas Cage a bigger nose, right? His face itself is just a little bit more rounded. It's less graded. I don't know. Yeah, that's the wrong word, but you know what I mean. There's less of that kind of texture in his facial structure. Which again, if that was something we wanted to sort of look at in terms of the aesthetic that we're trying to push, we talked about that cakey, clay sort of chip away makeup that we're seeing a lot in, you know, a lot of these characters. Is that something we need, or do we just need texture? Right? Is that the thing? So for me, I think I'd rather lean towards texture rather than just going like, okay, I'm gonna make a white pale face dude. And we've already started to stitch him. So let's get his nose stitched, because that seems like a wonderfully reasonable thing to do. Where else but in art can you stand here and say, I'm going to stitch up this guy's nose now? Okay, so we're back to that question of like, do we want it to be from like inside the like right around this area of the nose, kind of looping in? See, this is a little more difficult than I think I gave this credit for, right? Because this is going to change the entire way the nose actually works and looks. So let's see if that's something we want to do, or if that's just like, that's a lot to ask for what we're doing. Because think about it, right? If this is going to work, you're kind of going like nostril downward. So it's going to be like this, no? Because you wouldn't stitch it closed like that. You wouldn't try to pinch it closed. That would just be odd. Right? Like, I guess the easiest way would be like to go in here and maybe through inside and then around. Do you know what I mean? And then that would close these parts up. This would be like the cool way to do it, right? Because it would just be creepy looking, but then it would just be just there to be torturous. So maybe we don't stitch his nose. maybe even people who are doing like creepy horror stuff to this person, maybe even they were like, nah, that's just too much work. I don't think we're gonna do it. By the way, don't be afraid as an artist to just trim back your idea if it seems like it's just gonna be silly. Because, you know, too silly is too silly. All right, so, okay, so we've got it kind of mapped out. Let's start looking at how we want to sort of start giving this a little bit more layers and detail. So, like I've said, I'm constantly adding layers in the event that something kind of goes squirrely. I think I'm going to drop my pen size down a bit. So I'm just messing with the tip on this left-hand column there for all those people who don't have Procreate. You can see it. This will give you the tip size, right? So in this case, I'm going a little smaller. It's pressure sensitive. The particular type I'm using in terms of brush is a pressure sensitive one. So you can see if I press harder, I get more and less and less and less. Not to say that anybody, like I'm the only person who uses Procreate, I'm not, obviously, but for all those who didn't know, now you do. I've not been a digital artist for long. I started using Procreate like maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I really enjoy it. Like, it's great. especially for people who haven't used the digital platforms, it's a really easy way to kind of get into it. I got lucky and I got an iPad as well, so I get to use that as my digital interface, which is cool. I'm very happy with. So yeah, we're just gonna add detail. My style, I really enjoy adding cross hatching, but just in sort of little pockets. It's not the totality of my shading. It's just something I like to incorporate into all of my art. I don't know why. We also talked about wanting to have this little line here in the eye to have what's it called? A little bit of the eye poking through. So I'd like to do that as well. So I'm thinking we're going to do it this way. So we're just going to kind of add in these detail lines here just to give it a little bit more oomph. Again, like so much of this I think won't get seen, but for me it creates that, it's pretty necessary, right? I want that sort of to resonate with the people who are looking at it so that they can see what I'm seeing. So yeah, we've got that. So this is going to be our break line right here where the two eyelids meet. Alright, so this right here will be the underlid of the lower lid, right? And then right here, we're just going to give it a little bit more thickness just so it's clear. And then that's where we'll bury our eyes right in there. So I'm going to drop this bad boy in here. Yeah, we'll go like that. Okay, and then that's what we're going to do. So I'm just going to like layer a strip of color here, right, so that we've got that in the bow. Shoot, okay. Again, going backwards is not a problem when you have the luxury of this kind of program. I just didn't break where I wanted to break, so there we go. So we've got that, and then we'll we can position a pupil in there if we want, right? Just so it's just, again, kind of sneaky background. For the time being, we'll just do the gold black pupil thing, but I mean, we can always question, like, do we put it here? Where do we want to put it, right? We can start with center. So it can be a little bit more sort of like, realize that we're just going to be doing this shot as like a face shot, right? So even if we tilted the entire piece to like a portrait size, we're still going to have it kind of tight on the face. So all these little small details will resonate a lot more than it seems when I'm doing this kind of thing, because that's not indicative of the size. But I like what we're doing so far. Alright, so we've got that done. Let's go to the other eye and see what we want to play over there. So, yeah, that's our other eye. Where do we put our other eye? Up here? No? Oh, I see. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, we're going to have to shift some stuff around real quick. And then the fun part is that later on, if we want to change the colors, or we feel like, okay, this isn't the color, that I was looking for, we can always sort of color drop a different color in there, so that we can just play around with the end results, and then we feel more comfortable with what we end up with. If that makes sense. All right, so right now we're just gonna give our eyeballs some color as a background. So when we talk about over-design, I think it's also down to the characterization itself, right? I mean, we have to assume that somebody's directing traffic, literally and figuratively. And if that's the case, there has to be a creative thought process around, why this is the approach. And I wonder why that is. Is it that we could use the desensitization concept, right? We are not as affected by what would be considered grounded or not over exaggerated because of the environment, the world we live in. We could argue that point. Okay, so just a quick note. We can't use that black pupil effect over on this side because it'll just overshadow all of our detail work, right? So for the time being, we're going to do the cheap shot red just so that we have the stitching being seen, and then just making some choices, because I think we could probably afford to, no, maybe not. You just have to change the line work right here. See this right here? You just got to change that line work, right? Because that's not working, guys. That's not working, So if you think about, I'm not trying to, drive home the long legs thing, but if you think about the Nicolas Cage character in Long Legs and the way it's played, that even is just sort of over the top and a bit exaggerated. So you get to the question of, is that what we require to be frightened today, especially when we're watching like a movie or a film, right? It could be different if we're reading a book, and that's the other thing too, right? When you think about something like Pennywise, you think, okay, this is something that has a background in in a novel, in a book. So it has that sort of different level of layered description and sort of character depth that perhaps just film characters might lack, right? Or that perhaps the audience doesn't have access to because they're not given all of those notes that create the character by the actor or even by the director. It's just something that organically we learn through the watching of the film. So in that sense, we have all of this information about like characters like Pennywise, and we're still choosing to kind of go that like crazy over exaggerated puppet weirdness. I don't know, it just, anyway, not trying to bag on it, just chatting. We're not going to keep this eye red unless we think it'll actually work, but let's start giving a little bit more detail here for ourselves. So what we can do is, I think we're going to use this mint green, but I think we're going to go find a better version. So we can kind of play this a couple of different ways. We can move our little floaty wheel here, but I kind of want to get more of that tealy bluish, like that, and then go into the greens, and then we can change our base color to this, I think is the right answer. Right. Okay, so then, like I said, we're going to kind of model this off of something we've already worked on. So let's kind of use this as our base, and then we'll start adding some color layers to just give it a little bit more oomph. So we'll add that layer here, and then I like to use this classic view because it'll just let me stage down a bit. So I'm gonna go like that. we can do this a couple of different ways. You can go straight pen and add like all of your detail in, and then just sort of hand color, if that makes sense. So if you're looking to do more of that graded physical shading look, you can do that, right? And kind of play that game. Or you can do it this way. This freehand sort of block filling tool is kind of really cool because it allows you to do some stuff like this. I like to make it into patterns, right? So it just kind of gives me a little bit more freedom with block shading out. One thing you just got to remember is if you don't want certain things to be shaded, if you don't, you're gonna get stuck with stuff you don't like. So this is one way to do it, I think, that's kind of cool. It still gives you the ability to sort of make that motion happen that I do and I like to do with my sort of freehand shading, but it kind of does the heavy lifting, if that makes sense. So I can kind of do this, and then I can loop back this way, and then fill in that space. That said, if there was anything like this where I felt like I needed to color it in, I just have to go at it with the pen and then just tighten up that look, which I think is pretty cool, right? And then we've got a little bit more shade, right? And then if this isn't going to be our darkest color, which it's not, we can go a little bit bigger with what we're doing in terms of coverage, because this looks like this is going to be our like kind of in between. We've already said we were going to make this part of his face a little bit more bulbous, so let's kind of start doing the stuff that we know we're going to have end up shading with this color and this depth. And we already have that all done, but we're going to come underneath the eyebrow line like this, probably through it, because we'll just do a darker color for that. And you don't have to stop every time. I just stop every time because it's kind of what I do. But we can kind of go, we can continue using the tool. Right? And then we know we're going to end up doing this. That should work. Yeah. Right. So that's like, I mean, again, it's so right here you can just kind of see a little bit too much of a straight angle, and I didn't like the way that shade worked. Just fill it in a little bit with that. Maybe connect this with this. Give it a little bit more of, and you know, this is where you can add your cross hatching in if you want to, and you can start to like really play around with adding different, you know, textures and forms. But for me, this is just kind of the fun part. And then, yeah, Captain Layers, back at it again. If I'm gonna go another shade deeper, we'll go another shade deeper this way, and that can become our sort of our deeper colors for our darker shading. So, and again, we go right back at it with this handy tool. Just kind of add the details that you like to add. I mean, everybody's kind of got a thing they like to do, I think, in terms of art. So when I do eyes, I kind of always do the same thing. I don't think that's fair to say, but I think you kind of get into a stylistic comfort zone where you're like, okay, this is something I like to do because this conveys, you know, this level of detail, which is what I'm trying to do, right? And sometimes some of it doesn't make any sense, and you're like, why did I do that? That just seems like a bad idea. Sometimes it works out, you know? There we go. I feel like we could probably afford a little bit more here, you know what I mean? There we go. stupid-faced Nicolas Cage stitchy head going. This is nice. I like it. I like it. Hour 1, very nice. 2 people still here. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate you. I'm digging our Nicolas Cage guy. I'm trepidatious as to whether or not we'll have him finish tonight, but I'm certainly thinking we're going to do a lot of fun stuff with him. So we're back into the darker stitching, right? So here we go. So that's kind of what I want to do. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right, guys? Sometimes it does not work. There we go. Let's do a little pull down here like this. Yeah, there we go. You ever do something that you don't like anymore after you do it? This is one of those moments. I did not like that. I did not think it was good. We're still doing that darker shading, so we can kind of keep playing here. And this is when I don't mind doing a little bit more of that pen and ink work. I'm just pulling, because now we're in a place where I'm finding I might be getting too tunnel visioned on this section. Right? And I'm not just jumping in and giving her, as they say up here in Canada. Okay, there we go. That's a little better. There we go. Alright. You know, I'm talking about making this piece as like an over-exaggerated thing, and I'm doing it incredibly, you know, restrained. I don't... Maybe I'm not capable of doing that, but let's just keep giving her and we can keep going. It's good. But, you know, again, back on topic and thinking about some of the things that I think modern horror does really well is it's starting to really get its footing into atmospheric, like atmosphere building. I found a lot of the times that was one of the failings of cinema, especially horror movies, was just there was not enough effort being put into framing the sequence of the scene in a way that led you to naturally go, okay, this is not a good situation to be in. You know what I mean? There's a natural kind of urgency that gets created when film takes into account that the people involved are going to be in a situation where it's like things are not good. We're gonna have to keep that. Do you know what I mean? Like that, just that, like the fear of it's not that creative claustrophobic sort of feel. It's the it's more of the what do we do now? Yeah, I think we're gonna go darker. With this. Why is that super dark? Oh, okay, that's weird. That was really weird. Why did that happen? I wonder why certain things happen. That's why. Okay. I mean, that's cool and all, but that's not what I want. You want to see me make a stupid face for a couple seconds? Let's do it. Okay, that's fine. I actually don't mind that because I can play with that. And I did want to do a little bit of a darker shade on the left-hand side anyway, so we're good. Very good, very good. But we're going to do this, though. Just separate that layer now. Okay, let's get this bad boy pulled. Do this one like this. probably colored outside of the lines a little bit, but we can always fix that. We'll just do that for now. Yeah, I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all. That's all right. All right. I am going to take a very quick break. I will be right back. I will leave you with a fun scene to stare at. It's really not going to be anything. I'm just going to be right back on the screen. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Hello. Thank you for hanging out. Alright, let's continue with our Nicolas Cage face, shall we? And talk about horror movies. Alright, so let's get this show on the road. Alright, we're still doing our dark shading, so let's keep going. And let's kind of give our nostril here a little bit more form. This way. Just kind of play this game. That didn't work out in our favor. Did it? Hold on. Okay, I'm kind of cool with that. I'm not sometimes happy little accidents happen, so we're going to take this one as a win, right? Some of the things I really like about this is, you see how this line work right here worked out? Oh, I just erased that. That was so silly. You see this line work right here? It's just got this sort of like jagged form to it. I really like this tool to kind of create these things. You can do it. It's just, it's one of those things you kind of have to start and you kind of break off and you make a line. So you're basically making lines with this tool. It's going to fill it in for you like that. And then you can pull off and then it gives it this sort of like textured look, which I really enjoy. I don't particularly know if that line itself is the one I want, but you kind of get the picture, right? And you can do this detail work kind of anywhere and it works really well. So like for this piece right here where you just kind of want to have that like lip tension, we can kind of do that and move behind and kind of keep doing this and then come around and lock it off and then get that sort of, again, that shading. It's not the one I want, but you get to kind of play with it and experiment with it, and then, you know, be maybe more subtle with it, which is kind of where I think I should have went with it. It's just sort of sticking it just in this area here, and then maybe hinting a bit of depth over here, but not fully embracing it from that perspective. And then maybe mirroring it on the other side, just sort of giving us a little bit of this, but not necessarily keeping it flush to the line underneath, if that makes sense, like sort of bobbling in and out of it so that there is that sort of texture. And then we can continue to do this with all of the different color layers that we're looking at. So as we go and shade, we can kind of play this game. And as you get more comfortable with it, you know, do it whatever speed you feel is best for you. But it kind of gives you a nice little kind of ability to create texture and shade real quickly. And with some decent accuracy in terms of what you can do with it if you like what you're doing, right? So it gives you that line work without having that black aggressiveness that comes with doing more of your traditional line work. One of the things I struggle with, I guess, accepting, or I had struggled with accepting as an artist, was the aggressive line work that I have as a artist isn't what like a painter has, for instance, right? I don't know about anybody else who kind of plays in the same sandbox as I do in this sort of comic book world, but I don't know, painters are always so intimidating. They're just so intimidating. They can do such cool things, and I've never been able to do it. Like I just can't. It's just not in my wheelhouse. Now, I don't know if I want to create shade here or if I'm just trying to create tension. We're not going hyper realistic with this in any way. Like, we're really not. It's more of a kind of, again, that exaggerated character piece that we're looking to do. So I don't have to necessarily look for a super realistic kind of look. I kind of want to just do micro details and play in that sandbox for tonight, and then see what we can do with it as we go forward. You know what I mean? With this whole theme of over-exaggerated horror, I kind of go into the idea of, will we ever get a kind of resurgence of that subtle fear that you would have? And I don't know if we will, to be honest with you, because I think culturally we've kind of connected ourselves so deeply to this kind of horror that now it's just sort of expected. I'm gonna try to draw this out and see if this is what I want to do. I kind of feel like it is. I feel like I just want to highlight this lid point here, if that makes sense. I feel like it's getting lost in the dark, and I don't want it to, because it's cool. In fact, I dig this eye more so than the other eye. You always have a favorite. In this case, I like the other one. So you don't always have to use the cool filler tool. I just, I like to use it when I have to, or when it makes sense. Okay, let's see if that works. Yeah, I think that's a better answer, right? Right? I think we can throw some highlighting in here too. Just a little bit of like, kind of that feel. And a little bit here to kind of give that pocket a little bit more of a pop. I don't know about the lower lid, to be honest. Okay, stop doing the work. But I kind of want to do this, just to give it that little bit of, I think if we go like that, and maybe something like this, and like this, you know what I mean? Oh yeah. Yeah, there you go, right? There it is. I don't mean to sound surprised, but you know, it's always a good feeling when the things that you're seeing in your brain are the things that are kind of manifesting on the page. It's a nice feeling. So, pardon my giddiness. All right, so we've got that darker shading sort of over here, and I'm kind of thinking what I want to do. Let's see if this will work. So I've got this lighter shade here, right, that I kind of want to use like this. You'll see in a sec what I mean. Thinking this might work. We'll go back this way. Hear me out. I think this will work well. So we're going to go like this. Right through here, and then like this. Right? 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 See what I mean? So we're getting a little bit more of that. So like, ironically enough, we've taken this piece in two different ways, right? This side is more of that kind of classic layering effect, and what we're doing now is we're going, okay, I've got this dark shading that I've worked into this area right here, and then I've layered some lighter shades on top of it to give it some more of that pop, and then I'm starting to add more of the depth behind the darker shades. So this kind of plays really into the layers that you get to sort of use in this program, which is really cool. I think we can kind of afford to go a little bit further with the with this base color here, and just kind of even come through like this and pop this a bit more. And then I think we might be able to swing this here and then pull it all the way up here like that. Right? Yeah, I think that works really well. I don't think we can pull it into here. I think we have to go darker into the undernose area in order for it to kind of, I mean, we could always try going, is this the same color as this? Yeah, it is the same color as this. We could try going like a little lighter. And kind of into this spectrum here, just so that there's just a little bit of difference, but I don't know if it's gonna work. Let's see. Let's go like this. Let's just see if it'll work. I don't think it will. I think it's gonna, I think it'll be weird, but we're gonna try it. Alright, kind of come up this way, and then we'll go right underneath, and then in. Yeah, see, it's kind of weird, right? It's just a little bit too outside of the norm, right? But I do think that we're gonna have to address this area underneath the lips and above, like, sorry, underneath the nose and above the lips, because I think that's gonna be like the weird part. The weird part. Sorry, that's not exactly the answer, but I think you get what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's gonna be the problematic zone. How does everybody feel about Megan? I asked this question, not if you have a friend named Megan, what do you think about her or them? I meant the film Megan. That's weird having to qualify that. I don't know why I did. Have you guys seen the movie Megan? Do you like it? Is it? Oh, that's not the answer. What do you think? I like the first one in the kind of like, I like carnival-y, goofy movies with a horror twist to them. But as for like horror movies go, it wasn't exactly my favorite. Same problem. It was just like, Child's Play was really cool because, again, we're back to like a practical effect thing
meeting a amazing voice actor and realizing this insanely cool thing. Whereas Megan was not that. So again, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just like that person who's just like it doesn't get me because it's just not. It doesn't feel real. It's not tactile and tangible, right? This red eye is killing me inside, guys. No offense. I just can't keep staring at it. It's throwing everything off. So first and foremost, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fix it. So let's get this all fixed up. We're clearly looking for like that kind of edge, right? I've been playing with this thing with eyes lately, specifically on Procreate. Let me see if this is going to be the right answer. I think it is. Okay, so I think in this case, we're going to want to do like that whole. I don't know if I want to like a pupil, but I think we do like this maybe over exaggerated pupil, something like that, maybe on a weird angle. I kind of like the weird angle thing. Weird angle thing's cool. Well, did we make it? Oh, damn you. We didn't make a perfect circle, damn. Yeah, that's the other thing too. Remember, yeah, you gotta make perfect circles, guys. If you don't, if there's a break in that circle, you are filling your whole picture. There we go. I think we're back in the same boat of like we're gonna have to lean into a different color of like black just so that we can see the stitching. See what I mean? I think we can play with that. I think we can definitely play with that. So let's put one over that. Let's do the prototypical fun thing that I like to do just because it kind of breaks up the map and it allows us to create some sort of quick like depth and surface, and we're gonna mess about with the eye itself and just sort of try to make it a little bit more glossy and more shaded. So we're gonna get rid of the red. Question is, what are we gonna do in lieu of the red? Do this weird green. Do the green. Let's do the green. Yeah, I can mess with that. Let's do the green. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to put some shading on top of this eyeball. But again, I don't like the white. So let's get a white up here. Okay, let's use this green. Because that seems to be the kind of way we're going right now. It's like green, green, green. But maybe we don't want to green. Let's go yellow. And let's... So I want to get the base of the eye to be a bit more of the color contrast. You see what I mean? So we'll do that, and then we'll use this as our sort of base for the shading. So let's go with... I've been really kind of taking it from this perspective in terms of doing the shading part, is I've really been enjoying just doing the graded shading by starting with the lightest version and kind of working my way down. So yeah, and yeah, I admit it, a large amount of this detail is probably just not going to be able to be seen by the naked eye unless we zoom right in on it. But I don't know about anybody else. If you're an artist, you tend to see things that other people may not see, and as a result, it's always there. Okay, even I admit this needs to be a bit darker though, so let's do that. There we go, that should be a bit better. Whose lead was that? Oh man, okay, maybe we should go a little darker. There you go, maybe that'll look better. There you go, that's a bit better. Did it change all of them? It may have changed all. Okay, it did. Cool. Yeah, again, not gonna see it, but I'm gonna see it, so I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing.
So yeah, so I go a little bit darker, and then we do the same thing, only we just kind of go in a little bit deeper, um, and follow the shading line, and then we can switch sides. And it all depends on where you want to. Like how deep you want to go, what kind of detail you're looking to accomplish, right? Also use the darkest shade that we get on that to just sort of do that detailed work across the top of the eye and right throughout the design, so that we can do it that way if we need to. But we're just going to keep going a little darker and a little darker until we're at the point where we're happy with the amount of depth we've created with the shadow. Right, so there you go, and like again, so minute, but it's enough that I see it. We'll probably go one more level dark, and then that'll be it. Right, and then we'll just kind of bada boom, bada fuko, boom. Right, again, so not gonna see it, but I am. But I am. Let's back to our pupil, and I think what we want to kind of do now is we can use this. Nope. We can use this green as our base here, and then I'm thinking we're gonna kind of do the layer thing again. So bad, right? And then we'll go. This will probably do it. Yeah, okay, perfect. Alright, so what we can do is we can cheat a bit, and then we can duplicate the layer, and then we can take that top layer and do our darker color, right? Now, in this case, we don't have to go darker, we can kind of go more extreme. So I think we're going to go more in the extreme side, and then what we do is we drop that color in there, and then we use the uniform sizing tool, and we literally shrink the layer so that we can drop it in the middle, and that starts kind of creating that rings in a tree sort of a effect that you kind of want with an eye. At least that's kind of what I want. If you don't like that stretch, you can always go back and stretch it out. Like I noticed it wasn't going as far on the right that I wanted. And then you kind of do it again. I want to get a few different color grades in there. I might even go with like a yellow stripe so that there's that highlighted feel. So let's do that, and let's go with, like, I feel like that might be the right answer. And then we drop. Right, so we're getting a little bit more, and then I don't know, I think we're gonna go. Don't worry, we'll fix up we'll clean up the layers, I promise. I promise. Okay, so now I think we're gonna go to the disc, and we're gonna go like super yellow. Drop this bad boy nice and small. And then, I don't know, part of me wants to kind of do this. I don't know if it's gonna work, but let's try it. No, I can go with this now. Where's this? Let's go with that. You know what I mean? That like one little weird pupil. Yeah. Yeah, that's okay. We'll go like that. And then we'll do it one more time. I promise this will be the last time. And then we'll go back to this. Do that. And then we'll do this one more time. Right. And then on top of that, go back to this. Now we're cool to do like the super bright drowned out white. I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? There we go. Right, and then we look at it from here. We look at it from here. Because that's, again, what we're probably going to do. Or, like, this is likely the size of the piece, right? For it to be really kind of effective. And I don't mind having that chopped out, even if we have to, like, straighten it out. But I do like the sideways look. I actually kind of like that eye. I'm not going to lie. I like it. It turned out kind of cool. We can add a lot more detail to it if we really wanted to. I just think it'll kind of get lost in the shuffle. But you can start to, like, one of the things I've been doing recently is taking like an element like that and then using this blur effect and just sort of blurring it out or playing with the whole thing. So the blur can be like crazy. The other thing you can do as well with this, like these layers here, if you're so inclined, is you can, and this is probably a great way to conserve layers, is you're gonna merge these bad boys all together. So now you've got, now if you don't want that, you want to do this, which is probably the right answer, is now take these and merge these layers together. See what I mean? So now you have the two elements separated. So if you wanted to remove the pupil, you can remove the pupil. You want to remove the highlights, you remove the highlights. Right? If you like the pupil, you don't like the base, take it out. Right? And you can look at all of that as options as to what you like to do and what you don't want to do. So again, freedoms in that sort of digital formatting is kind of peaked. There's something I do want to change though. It's that, okay. There's this guideline here that's kind of killing me inside, and I don't like it. I don't like it, guys. I don't like it. So we're just gonna take it out. It's been distracting me. It's been distracting me, guys. There we go. Okay. Let's put this back in. Excellent. Now we can put our eye back in. Yeah, don't be afraid to keep as many layers, but just bear in mind the fact that you are capped at a certain amount of layers, depending on how you set up your canvas. If there's ever any interest in that sort of work, just, you know, send me a message and I'm there. Octavia, I don't like the movie Megan. That's fair. I said this at the beginning of this particular discussion, was that I really wanted to like these characters. And it's not that I didn't like them. It's that I felt like they just didn't do enough to satisfy my need to be scared. And I felt like they could do so much better. Do you know what I'm saying? That's kind of what we've been discussing the whole time. It's just this idea of this underwhelming over-exaggeration. I call it over-design. You can call it trying too hard, whatever you want. Little details you can add in, by the way, with our stitching here. We haven't really done a lot of work in terms of creating that detail space. So, I mean, something you can definitely do is just find your layer with your stitching in it, which is right there. Add another layer underneath. And again, like I said, you can clean layers up. Don't be too scared about it. You can do it this way if you really want to. You can take your hard line, take your stitch, and then just run a hard line behind it in whatever way you want to connect the shadow. Right? And then what you can do is, I think we had a little stitch over here. And then what you can do is you can take that and you can drop the opacity. So now it looks like shadow. Right? I mean, you can take it one step further if you wanted to, and you can now take this tool and you can use the warp tool. So what that does is it kind of grids out your piece, right? And now you can take details. So I can take these shadows and I can slightly pull them so that they curve around the eye. It's a bit finicky because you're going to have to mess around with it. You're going to have to pull and prod and kind of push and pull and line up all of your stuff in a way that it makes sense. And you may have to then go about it a different way of then like going back into the piece and then taking the stitching, right? So theoretically we could, right? So you kind of get the picture, you kind of get some spatial changes. You could theoretically go into here, right? So this is our stitch line. So now what we can do is, okay, we could do a couple things here if we wanted to. You can come and duplicate the layer, right? Because there's some stuff in here that we don't necessarily need. We just really want to work on the stitching. So you could theoretically just erase all your extra fodder and then redraw it or just use that. In this case, we don't have to go that hyper complicated to just demonstrate. So go back into our warp tool. Now, you're going to notice it takes up a lot more space because this particular part of the layer has two parts attached to it. So this is one of those moments to advocate for being a little bit cleaner with your layer. I don't know if we'll be able to do this manipulation, but we're going to try. Yeah, see? So now I'm kind of limited. I can't pull the individual parts of the layer anymore because I've pulled this entire layer across the whole piece. And don't worry, we can fix it. See? So if I wanted to do the same sort of shadow manipulation thing is, like I said, you would have to take this layer and then find the redundant parts that you don't want to use, right? So first we have to find whatever it is down here at the bottom of the piece that's making it so that we have this connected. So you kind of have to search for the line. So there we are. So those are the lines that we have to get rid of. So if you take that out, I think we take that out. Let's go back and let's see. Oh, we got one more to go. You see it though, right? You see these like little pen marks, right? So what now, the cool part is that once you get rid of that, this will, like the little icon in the corner here, will slowly shrink. So we just have to figure out what else is there. There's gotta be something else down here. And that's kind of the unfortunate part is, oh, you know, there's probably an easier way to do this. I feel dumb now. All right. All right, let's do this. This is an easier way. Let's go over here. I'm gonna pull our layer up real quick, okay? And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this layer, the one that the questionable one, and we're gonna just kind of drop it, the opacity a bit, and then we're gonna go back to our new layer, and then we're gonna redraw our lines. So now we just have to trace over them, same sort of pressure point, and because we lined up our shadows with our stitches, we can kind of use this. So now we're in a position where we can take this layer, right, and we can now do the warping thing. So we can pull it in the same way that we did with the other layer. But like I said, you got to pinch, right, these little spaces here so that they conform with the line work that you already have there, right? But it is a pretty trippy way to kind of put detail in where maybe you were like, oh, I didn't think I'd have to do that. You know what I mean? Like a second thought. You can kind of combat those second thoughts with like actual action, which is cool, right? And now that we've got, see, it's going to be a little bit of pulling and prodding, right? Because now we want to line it up with the shadow lines that we've already now established. And you'll notice that a lot of, like, when you pull one way, you kind of have to compensate the other. So there's just a little bit of adjusting every every so often. But the end results can be pretty cool. Right, so there we go. And now we've got
Stitching with a shadow line in a different color, so that's kind of cool too.
right, which I'm really happy with.
I think one of the things that we have to sort of agree to is horror has matured and changed and sort of evolved or adapted to different audiences over years and years. Right? The question, I guess, has to be, are we happy with where we are, and do we think that this is the best that we can do in terms of trying to have a fear-induced experience with a cinematic villain or character, right? The idea of being so uncomfortable with something that when you walk away from it, you still think about that and it still stays with you. And I think that's something that I don't think anybody's trying not to do. Let's make that clear. But the way they're trying to get there, I think, is not the way that we need to. I think that came out wrong, but I think what would be the best idea when you're tackling this sort of question of is horror losing its horrific nature because we're trying too hard and we're over designing and we're over pushing, where we used to be able to get there with a hell of a lot less. And I think that's got to be the thing that we sort of look at. So we've looked at over exaggeration. We've looked at this concept. We've looked at these characters. We started playing with Nicolas Cage's face, but we've looked at characters like Longlegs and the sort of caricature-ish sort of approach that seems to be being applied. We've looked at Freddy Krueger and the new reimagining of his character, making him more grounded and realistic, but at the same time losing that resonance that we had with the original Freddy, not only from an aesthetic but from a characterization. So you've got this actor acting the hell out of this part, but because of that, we're losing all of the character that we really all fell in love with originally. Even right down to, contrasting to two very, very different approaches to the same character. You've got the modern interpretation with the bulbous head, the exaggerated cheekbones, that sort of menacing, prototypical menacing smile face thing that we've kind of all done. I do it as an artist. It's a staple of my comic book, horror movie, villainy sort of drawing style. I love it. It's awesome. It works for a reason. But you take that menacing and you take this contrast, and I look at this as the superior version because, as I said before, I can see this come into my door. And that is what resonated with me. That's what made me afraid of this film. Not the situations necessarily, but this face and this guy and his ability to, again, ground this in something that was tangible. That was, and I still think is the most effective way of approaching horror. The iconic silhouette of Michael Myers in the distance. The never-ending force that is Jason Voorhees' momentum. That's just constant. But again, that iconic hulking mass, the Leatherface, and it's not Leatherface running around with the chainsaw at the end of the film, sort of triumphant in his victory over the interlopers, but that first scene, that scene of that door sliding open, that quick grab, that knockout, and then that pull, that's what resonates. That immediate, holy shit, I'm dead, right? And I think, again, like, these are
these shock value moments that I think so many of modern horror producers, directors, and creators are trying to do and build an entire film around this jump scary, holy shit, everything's frightening, scary, oh my gods, right? And I think that in my mind is kind of the issue. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take what we've talked about tonight and we're going to apply it to our next show. So on Thursday, we're going to go live again, and in this one, it's a new show. Everything's new, I guess, since I've just started this, but I'm really excited. We're going to be doing the Villain Lab, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the concepts that we've worked on here tonight about the over-design of characters and the over-design of horror movie characters, and we're going to take the opposite approach. We're going to look at how to design a character with a more subdued and more subtle approach. The idea of fear being something that doesn't have to be smashed in your face, and that it's a much more effective journey when it's layered and packaged in a way that is much more realistic, or at least something more, sadly, almost approachable. This has been a lot of fun. I had a great time. I really appreciate everybody swinging through. The comments in the chat and the raid, so thankful. That was really awesome. I am super grateful. I did set a Twitch follow goal of 10, and I believe I may have hit it, but I'm on StreamYard right now, so I don't know what all of my stuff is. So thank you for dealing with my first time out. I'm really excited to see where we're going to go going forward. Let's get to Thursday. Let's get down. Let's go through all of this fun stuff again. And to you and to everybody else, thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. I will see you again. And toodles, as they say. Toodles? Really? I'm going with toodles? We're going with toodles. Toodles!